Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, introducing climate smart agricultural practices to help build resilience to extreme climate events. Implementing eco solutions to prevent flooding and breeding of mosquitoes. Increasing water conservation and harvesting capacities, and rehabilitating community water reserves, installing solar powered mobile water pumps to drain during floods and irrigate during droughts. What do all these initiatives have in common? They are all micro projects being implemented to build resilience in vulnerable communities in Belize, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Suriname as part of the Community Resilience Building Initiative in the Caribbean. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the second of two interviews explaining how exactly the CRB initiative is using climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction strategies to build a more resilient Caribbean, one community at a time. I am Travisa da Silva, Communications Officer with the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, IFRC, and we have with us to tell us more. We have Mrs. Velda Ferguson Dewsbury, who is the IFRC Project Manager with responsibility for the CRB initiative. We have with us Mr. Matthew Leonard, who is the representative from the Canadian Red Cross, and he is based in Panama at the IFRC Americas Regional Office. We also have with us from Belize Mr. Orlando Jimenez, and he is the project coordinator for the CRB in Belize. We also have with us Miss Decima Hamilton, and she is the project manager or the project coordinator rather for the CRB project in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we have Mr. Joel Strider, who is the project coordinator also for the CRB project in Suriname at the Suriname Red Cross. So, in addition to the Red Cross team members, we also have with us a few community members who will be sharing their experiences with the CRB project. So, we have with us Mr. Marsden, and he is a community member from Belize. We'll be hearing more from him a little later. And we also have with us Mrs. Gwinnell Hazel, and she is a community member from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So it's a full house today. Welcome to you all. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to get right into it. So we're going to start with you, Velda. Can you tell us a little bit more about the CRB project and why these specific countries, Belize, Suriname, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, why exactly were they selected?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Show Teresa. The CRB project is a 4-year regional initiative aimed at improving community resilience by strengthening the capacity of Caribbean communities to respond to disasters through climate change. And this project is unique from others that we're implementing in the region in that this has a specific focus on gender equality. It basically aims to mainstream a comprehensive disaster approach in the region through collaborative and evidence based action. The project builds on previous accomplishments in disaster risk and resilience programming in the Caribbean that has been undertaken since 2010. And it is a component of a broader programmatic approach to community based disaster risk management that has been adopted by not only the Red Cross, but also by CDMA, which is the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, and national disaster organizations throughout the region. It complements several programs that have either already been completed since 2010 or some that are underway, and it responds to national requests for support in disaster management across the region. As you indicated, the countries involved in this project are Belize, Suriname, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And these countries were selected because of their high exposure to disasters, as well as the alignment with the work that is being done by the Red Cross National Societies in terms of their programmatic work. and the ability of these national societies to actually undertake the work that is involved in this project, and then desire and their need for training related to disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, and even gender equality issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Velda. Wow, that's quite a mouthful. This project is doing a lot, and we are so anxious to hear about all the different activities being undertaken in these countries. But before we get into that, Matthew, why exactly did we need a CRB project? I mean, what figures can you share with us to tell us why this project
Yeah,
is needed?
thank you. As Velda explained, it's related to the people who are affected. Like we have statistics from the regional Caribbean database that explain that only in the last 10 years, there were more than 3 million people who were affected by the disasters. And one important thing is there's also very vulnerable people out of these. For instance, UNICEF did a study that 9 out of 10 children in Latin America and the Caribbean will be exposed at least twice to an environmental shock. And as we see that the Caribbean's economies, they are really highly dependent on climate patterns because if there's increase in hurricane, it will kill tourism, it will affect agriculture, it will affect fishing, which are the main economies. And there's also another studies by the Inter-American Development Bank that they say that an estimate 22 billion US dollar by 2050 will be a value of 22 billion dollars of damage will be is projected. So there's a lot more to come. So hopefully this will be mitigated by such initiative like this project, the CRB project. And in terms of so in terms, as Velda explained, there's different several stakeholders in the partnership, which as she explained, there's a regional component, and there's also a lot more local component at country and community level. But that I will not go into the details because my colleagues here will explain. So I give the word to you. But basically, it's some of the main statistics I gave you are quite a justification for this initiative. Thank you.
Okay, and before we go on to Orlando, can you tell us who are the main stakeholders involved in this project? Because I know we have a donor, very generous donor. So can you tell us who the
Yes.
donor is? Who are the other
Yes, the
stakeholders?
project is sponsored by Global Affairs Canada. And as Canadian Red Cross, we are coordinating the overall project, but there's different components. Like there's one regional component, which is led by IFRC, and there's key stakeholder, which is CDMA. And as well at country level, it's each national society, which are Belize, Suriname, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So they are the one in their country who manage the project, and their main stakeholders are the community members. This is the number one, but also the local disaster authorities, like we call the NDOs, NEMO, like National Disaster Authorities. They have different name in different countries, plus the different civil society organization. So these are the main stakeholders, and there's several others around that, but these are I would say the key ones.
All right, thank you so much, Matthew. And we want to use this opportunity to thank all the stakeholders involved. Thank you so much
Yes.
for your partnership on this. And thank you also to Global Affairs Commission for your sponsorship, your funding of this project. And of course, thanks to the Canadian Red Cross as well for your role in coordinating this project. So Orlando, we'll head over to you. So Matthew mentioned that you have some stakeholders at the country level and you're doing a lot of activities. Can you share with us what are some of the activities that are happening at the country level and at the community level?
That is in regards to the CC question, yes? Okay,
Right.
here,
So yeah. So the climate change adaptation, that disaster risk reduction. What activities are you undertaking at the country level?
okay, to mitigate the problem of climate change, there's a lot of things that we've been doing at the community level. For example, they've been collecting garbage and disposing of the garbage. They've been reducing the burning of the forest, which was a big problem a couple of years ago. We had at one time like 98 fires going on, and this has reduced considerably. And the burning of garbage has also reduced. Many of the people are looking into the possibility of engaging in the doing of compost heaps for them to replace that as instead of fertilizer. As it is, this cost of fertilizer has increased dramatically, and so they need to find an alternative method to fertilize their plants, and they are looking into this at the present moment. Also, we have established nurseries in the communities and also sheltered, structured for the community members to have plants available to either sell or distribute for them to mitigate climate change issues. Many of the CDRT have sat in training for them to become aware of disasters. And the CDRT themselves are out in the community preaching what they are learning, how to be prepared for disaster and so on. They are sharing the information. And also we have retrieved a plant that has been in existence for a long, long time, and it was used before, but we have lost it. We have retrieved this plant and known as the Mayan Knot, and it's been distributed and produced in some of the communities. These have also been distributed not only in the rural areas, but also in the urban areas, and it's catching on. The Mayan Knot has garnered the attention nationally and even Central America and internationally. It's a plant that is going to be the game changer, and people will be able to collect this seeds for food, be able to have the trees there for ecological restoration where animals, birds, and so on can live, and also to be able to protect the environment from erosion and the like. And it's a very good feed for livestock as well. So this is one of the major activities that we are doing right now under a micro project that was funded by the Canadian Red Cross.
All right, thank you so much, Orlando. And one of the things you mentioned was about the nursery. You've been, working on planting some trees, and we know you have a very innovative project there that speaks to the Mayan Knot tree, which is one of your micro projects. So where you have a very short clip from a longer video, and we share the video on our social media pages so you can see it. But we're going to share a very short clip for you that shares some more details about the Mayan Knot tree, which is one of the micro projects in Belize.
En mi país se llama ojuste. Aquí para el área mesoamericana esto es conocido como árbol de Ramón. Es la semilla de Ramón. Fue una semilla nativa muy importante para la dieta de nuestros antepasados mayas. Posee grandes bondades como hierro, ácido fólico, zinc, es alto en fibra, tiene vitamina A, vitamina B, vitamina C. Es un árbol sumamente bondadoso que no necesita grandes espacios, no necesita fertilizantes, no necesita ningún tipo de químico para cultivarse. Es completamente orgánico y se adapta a cualquier clase de clima. Entonces nosotros estamos diciéndole a las personas, siembren un árbol de Ramón y ustedes están sembrando alimentos para las futuras generaciones, van a tener un aire más limpio y van a conservar los mantos acuíferos.
This time around, they actually are seeing tangible, profitable results from the work that they're doing. And we engage the community, and not only the communities of the project, but we have even managed to include the neighboring communities in some cases. So we have been working in 7 communities, 5 in the Cayo district and 2 in Belize City. And once people started to know more about it, others got interested, and things like that rippling effect of knowledge being disseminated, engaging the community and taking what they are already doing on a small scale and trying to help them make it bigger.
Sometimes you just need a spark to start a fire, a very small spark.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. And as your colleague Fred said, sometimes you just need a spark to start a fire, and you've started such a major fire there, so to speak, in terms of, just trying to build on these initiatives to help make communities more resilient. So keep up the amazing work. And the Mayan Knot tree is certainly just only one evidence of that. All right. Thank you, Orlando.
Thank
The
you.
Seema, we're gonna come over to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the what are some of the activities that you have been doing in your country in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to help your communities to mitigate the impacts of climate change?
Hello, colleagues. Good afternoon, everyone. I suppose you're hearing me loud and clear.
Loud and clear.
Okay, we have been privileged to benefit from the CRB project, and we've done a number of things. More recently, we have been engaged in the climate smart agriculture with our youth, the schools. So, our schools are primary or elementary school and secondary school. But our specific focus for the project over the last several months would have been not necessarily on mainland St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but on a neighboring or sister island, Beckway, and the Paget Farm community. They would have had significant challenge because of the whole business of climate change and what that is doing to their community. They would have had several engagements and were privileged to benefit from an environmental scientist who visited and would have made some suggestions. One of them would have been hard engineering, which would have required maintenance, significant maintenance, even when the project was closed. But consequent upon the deliberations of the community, we were able to do an eco-balance system. And I believe my colleague Gwen, who is from that community, is better positioned to inform you of the project and how we've been able to progress.
Thank you so much, Decima. And yes, we actually do have Gwenelle here. Gwenelle she's from the Paget Farm community in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And you, as Decima mentioned, you have been assisting with the micro projects for the Swamp Initiative. So can you please tell us a bit more about this? Why did you choose to participate in the first place? What can you tell us more about this initiative, and how exactly has it benefited your community? Hold on just a sec, where you're unmuted.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, I believe in giving service to my community, and I have been doing that since a child. So since this project has come on stream, I'm a part of the CRB, the CDRT team. Continue with the initiative.
All right. And for those who do not know what CDRT means, it's actually Community Disaster Response Teams. So you would hear us referring to this particular acronym throughout the live, because it is one of the activities involved in the CRB project and so many other projects that we have had over the years. But certainly CDRT is the Community Disaster Response Teams that are trained to respond. And we'll hear more about that later on. But Gwenelle, can you tell us exactly what is the Swamp Initiative? Like, what exactly did it entail? And can you tell us more about the benefits that it has for your community?
Okay, the project, we have converged a swamp into a pool, mangrove swamp into a pool. And this engagement has allowed us to be more connected to our community. Creating a space where others can socialize. The project will benefit the community in many ways, namely like mitigating the breeding of mosquitoes, the aesthetic of the area, It has been improved. The site, it is becoming a tourist attraction. Well, it has become a tourist attraction because we have seen persons are using it. The tourists are coming in from overseas and they are already enjoying the scenic view. And it has a potential for livelihood to be emerging. The children in the communities also, they have the opportunity to be engaged in maintaining a healthy school environment because there is a school just on the other side. The engagement of the project allow for the youthful population from like grade K to grade 6 to participate in developing a healthier ecosystem because we're involving the children also within the project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gwinnell, for sharing with us the Swamp Initiative. And the pictures do look amazing. I see Nisha in the chat. She said that the picture looks amazing. And you can really see the transformation. Like it's almost as if it's two different places, right? So great work on what you have done in terms of transforming the swamp into a pool and sharing all the benefits that you mentioned with that initiative. All right, so we're gonna go back over to the CMA because we're seeing some pictures of the CDRT training. So I want to bring you back in to just tell us a little bit more about what exactly we know that St. Vincent and the Grenadines, for instance, has faced several disasters. You have been through floods, you have been through hurricanes, and most recently, how can we forget? We cannot. We can't forget the La Soufrière volcanic eruption in 2021, which of course, had a lot of impacts on the people who live there. Can you tell us how exactly the CRB project helped the communities in your country to face some of these events?
Thank you. The CRB project would have been well on its way in our 3 project communities. One of our project community is located in the north of the island. This is our Magum community, and they're actually in the heart of the red zone. I think very often we misunderstand when we said red, green, or orange. St. Vincent is so minute that doesn't matter where you are, you would have been impacted to some extent. However, in the red zone, the members would already have had the opportunity to be trained along with other members in the other 2 project community. But what was significant is that once we started the training, particularly shelter management, we found that we were hearing that there may just be a volcanic eruption. And part of our training in CDRT was how to manage shelters and other responsive mechanisms that could be in place to ensure that there was a quick bounce back after a disaster. And so we were privileged in inverted commas, to be able to extend that training, not just to our members, not just to our project communities, but we had the Ministry of Education in St. Vincent. Of course, it is important to point out that the ministry is responsible for shelter management. And so they drew on our services, and they were able to have a number of their principals and shelter managers trained. Additionally, we had a number of religious organizations who themselves were engaged in managing shelters. They reached out to us, so that we really, the CRB project really placed the persons who were keen on learning in a position to be able to respond differently to the volcanic eruption. And so we were able to serve. Since then, we have had a number of persons who would have reached out to us to continue these trainings. Of course, we had other aspects to respond to, but that business of having a platform from which to train our nationals, which was provided by the CRB project, is something that can be seen as a major plus for us here in St. Vincent.
All right, amazing. And can you just show the pictures again of the CDRT team being trained, and also they received equipment to help. So it's not a matter of just training them, but you also provided equipment for them to be able to respond, and to be fully equipped so that they have all the tools that they need. And of course, this isn't just in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The CDRT training and provision of equipment, that is a concept that's replicated in all the countries, not just St. Vincent, but also Belize, Suriname as well. So thank you so much, to Seema, for sharing that with us. So, Joel, we want to come over to you because we also know that Suriname has been impacted by several hazards as well. And in 2021, remember last year, you were impacted by several floods, and a number of communities were impacted by these floods. Can you tell us how exactly the CRB project helped these communities to reduce the risks of the hazards that you saw? And we know that you have systems like the community early warning systems. You can tell us a bit more about that as well.
Yes, thank you, Teresa. Good afternoon, everyone. I will start to talk about the community early warning systems. We see that these are important for the communities. And in Suriname, there are 7 communities that are part of the CRB project. And the early warning systems helps these communities to prepare as early as possible for upcoming threatening disasters. And what we also see is that there were some kind of existing early warning systems already within the community, and that the CRB project could actually strengthen that existing community early warning process. And what we have done is, for example, in Kronenburg and Akalikondre, because you mentioned 2 of the communities in which we had floods, severe floods. These communities had CDRT teams that were trained as part of the CRB project. And luckily, we were actually, we had completed the trainings for these teams while the floods happened. And we had seen that the teams were very confident in the way that they respond to these floods. When linking that to when we look at how they make their fellow community members aware of this event, we saw that they went house to house, but they also used WhatsApp groups. They created community WhatsApp groups in which they shared information. And also, we see that technology is something that especially was a plus for them, because, for example, in Kronenburg, there was, for example, an elderly woman that they could not reach by the mob. So they actually used this technology or the phone to reach out to the fellow members in that house. So the CRB project, we also provided for CDRT equipments. One important part of that was the sandbanks, the sandbags that actually were used by these communities to also protect their houses of incoming water. The CRB project also is working on an advanced community early warning system to gather data from the tides within the Kotika River. That is one of the rivers in the district of Maruena. And that is in collaboration with the Maritime Authority of Suriname. This information provides actually information about high tides, which can be linked to weather information, which can actually help or inform community members about upcoming floods so that they can be prepared. The CDRTs, they were therefore trained to also read the tide tables to know what these figures means. And it was quite good to see how they could actually because all of these numbers within in these tide tables were actually for me very new, and with them I also learned to actually read these tides. And of course, for us as the Suriname Red Cross, it was also a strengthening of the collaboration with not only the Maritime Authority of Suriname, but also the University of Suriname. There are 2 students of the university that are doing research in regards to the community early warning system. And finally, the NDO, the NCCR, that's how we call them here, they are involved by giving their support to connect the community early warning system to the national early warning framework. Yes, I hope that I give the answer.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much for sharing. And I wanted to just share my screen so I could share some of the photos that we actually have from the Suriname team. So because you mentioned the CDRTs and the ones who had helped out in the flooding last year, and we actually have some photos of them helping out. So allow us to just show the audience that's watching what exactly you meant when you said the CDRT was heavily involved in the floodings last year. So you can let me know if you are seeing these pictures. So we have the CDRT team, and the flooding was quite massive, as I recall from the photos, but the CDRT teams were able to jump into action. Here they are being equipped and right, and going through the sensitization, of course, with your disaster management coordinator, and they were visiting the houses, as you mentioned. So I do remember the work that the CDRT. So it's not just about training people and then the training is, they just have it and sitting down with it. We have persons who they actually had the opportunity to, and they jumped right into action with putting to good use the training that they received and the equipment that they received and so forth. So it's amazing that you have been able to do all of this work and then see the fruit of your work being shown in the aftermath of the flood response. All right. So thank you so much, Joel, for sharing with us.
Thank you as well,
right. Thank you so much. So we're going to go over back to the CMA. We understand that a major part of the CRB project, so it's not just about climate change adaptation, it's not just about disaster risk reduction, but a major part of it is also about gender equality, right? And we know that through this, the entire project has a gender lens approach. And so one of the types of evidence of this is the creation of a PGIE, and PGIE stands for Protection, Gender, Inclusion in Emergencies. Protection, Gender, and Inclusion in Emergencies. PGIE. You created a first responder network for PGIE. Can you tell us a bit more about what this involves and what do you expect to come out of this this network?
Okay, thank you again. I believe that most of us on this platform would be aware that the CRB project was cushioned with some priority themes. We looked at protection, child protection, the PGI. We looked at prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse. And in St. Vincent, we would have been able to add the anti-trafficking in human strand of the discussion. When it comes specifically to the PGI and the first responders, we would have had some training. We would have a number of persons who would have indicated an interest. And so while we have not necessarily concretized a particular network, the idea is to ensure that the Ministry of National Mobilization, that we work very closely with, that they work along with the persons who we have been able to expose to our training. Of course, persons on the ground, boots on the ground, always very important if you're going to have any successful community projects. And so the persons who have been exposed are scattered throughout the country. And so it makes it easier for the ministry to be able to work along with persons on the ground and to bring some measure of relief to persons who have been exposed in some way to the negative impact of gender issues. I believe if we in St. Vincent were to be upright, we would let you know that our training has been able to generate a national conversation around not necessarily only gender in a nutshell, but do that cross-border breeding into our anti-trafficking, which is very important in the wider scheme of how we function. And so here in St. Vincent, we have been able to ignite that conversation. There is much to look forward to because the platform, I would have said earlier that the platform would have been established based on the support we received from the CRB. And that platform is here to stay. So our relationship with the first responders is really a relationship with the Ministry of National Mobilization because they cover the whole gamut. They do child protection, they do gender, they do inclusion. And that is what we are going to use as our exit strategy in terms of leaving a strong network behind.
Okay, sounds good. And we're looking forward to seeing how that materializes as well. But of course, we know that gender equality is an important component to consider in any initiative that you're carrying out. So thank you so much for sharing information on that, Decima. So we want to go now to Mr. Thomas Marsden. So Thomas, welcome again to the live, and thank you so much for joining us. So we know that you are from the community of St. Matthew's Village.
Right.
And if you could just adjust your camera slightly so we can see you a bit more. Right. So he's from the community of St. Thomas, from St. Matthew's Village in the Cayo district. Right.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yes.
So you have been involved in the CRB project as well. Can you tell us a bit more about why you decided to get involved, and also what has it been like? What are some of the benefits that you have seen for your community?
Okay. Presently, there are a lot of negative forces that are bringing a lot of changes in life all over the world. And climate change, one of the negative forces that is affecting quite a lot of us, and it's real. I became involved in this project because I consider myself a volunteer social worker. I have been involved in this 4 communities that we are focusing on from almost from the time they started, and so I know the people, I know the physical circumstance of the various communities, and I also consider that our young people need guidance, that they need encouragement to contribute to their communities. So that is the reason why I get involved.
Sounds amazing, and we're happy that you were able to to not just get involved, but also bring in the young people with you and provide
yes,
guidance.
that is extremely important.
Extremely
Extremely
important
important.
because it's about building sustainability and ensuring that you're
That is
able to
correct.
pass
That is.
on the
It
knowledge.
would it would be a disaster if we do not include our young people, train them.
Right.
That is, we're talking about disaster management.
Yes, yes.
So
So
we
you have been trained as a first responder. How useful does this come in as part of, the project? You mentioned that where you live it's quite a dangerous space. And so can you tell us more about how this project helps you in your community in terms of being able to deal with some of those hazards that exist?
Yes, particularly where I live on the edge of a major highway here in Belize, and we have had many road traffic accidents. And because of the basic first aid training and that kind of leadership and wanting to take action, has me and a few others in my neighborhood, we have had to respond, and we had as first responders many times on the highway, and that is the people show appreciation. So I think and the next thing, the Red Cross, the Belize Red Cross has done, to my estimation, a very good work in they came like lighting up the area so that people could could be trained and want to have the willingness to participate and respond to any kind of disaster in our area. And I think that is growth. That is good.
Amazing. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for
yeah,
volunteering in the first place, and not just
yes,
volunteering, but also putting into action the tools and the knowledge and everything that you have learned. Of course, we know first aid training is one of the components of the training as well, just helping community members to be trained in first aid and be ready to respond. I remember last year, not last year, the year before rather, when I was in Belize, there was a
really.
young lady. Yes, she mentioned that she was trained in first aid, and she recalled an incident where she had almost lost someone she loved because she wasn't trained prior to the training. She didn't know anything. She didn't know what to do if someone stopped breathing, etc. And she was
Yeah,
just talking about how
yeah.
amazing it was to now have that knowledge so she could have the
It's
peace of mind. So if someone
yes,
she loves or someone around her, has stopped breathing, she could do CPR. She could help them because
yes,
she now had training from the Red Cross. And it was so amazing to hear that.
yes.
So thank you for
Service to
sharing.
others is the best work of life.
Yes, yes. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for sharing, Thomas.
I want to mention also that I participated in the solid waste training
Hmm.
in four sessions in our area, and the people responded properly, and they want to know more. They want to fix things,
Hmm.
because
Right.
they, so I think we should do more of it.
Definitely,
I think we should
definitely.
do more
And
of it.
as we talk about doing more, I want to hear. So, thank you so much, Thomas. We're going to go back to the project coordinators, and Orlando, I'm going to come back to you. Can you tell us more about that? There have been so many things that this project has taught us, right? And I think one of the things that we have noticed as well is that you're not just doing activities for the sake of doing them, but you're realizing that there is actually some positive changes, some positive differences that's happening in your communities. And Thomas mentioned a few of them in his contribution. But can you tell us, Orlando, have you noticed any differences in your communities that you've been working with over the past few years since the CRB project has been implemented? And this question is not just for Orlando, but we're gonna ask the Seema and Joel as well. So Orlando, if you could just unmute your mic and tell us what differences that you have noticed.
Sure. Thank you. We've seen several changes in the communities. One of the biggest changes that we have seen is that people are more aware of climate change, and they are taking steps to mitigate this. They are planting trees, and they are also planting underground crops, because their thought is that if in the event a hurricane comes, the corn, the vegetables will all blow away, but the underground crops will be there for them to survive on. This is in addition to other plants that they are planting presently. That's a change that we have seen. With the training of health and hygiene, we have seen people practicing more health and hygiene, not only for their personal benefit, for their family benefit, but also for environmental benefits. You can see them collecting garbage. And one of the micro projects installed drums where people could dump their garbage, and we organized with the ministry to remove the garbage and take it to the recycling plant. So this is something that people are doing. At one time, the chairpersons were complaining very much that her team had to go there and pick up garbage from the bus stops, from the schoolyards, from the streets. But now we are seeing an improved difference that people are dumping in the drums, in the receptacles that has been provided. So we notice that they are more into the practice of health and hygiene. Also, there has been an increased connectivity between the community and line ministries, civil societies, and NGOs. We see them advocating for changes in their community. And Mr. Tam mentioned that he was there a long time, and he's part of the area development group that will take on the onus to create changes or to bring changes to their community by advocating for what they need. In addition to that, the CDRT have initiated, the CDRT, Community Resilience Team, have initiated a bartering system where they exchange food from one community to the other. If you have plantains, I give you give me that, and I give you chickens, and that's the way how they started mobilizing and organizing, especially when there is floods. So they are doing this bartering system of food exchange. And then when the highway that Mr. Tam spoke about, the George Rice Highway washed away, we saw CDRT members there guiding the traffic. Said there's no road, so they were guiding the traffic. Stop, 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 you cannot go. So they were very much involved in that. And then the communities are preparing themselves to become reliant by organizing into groups. We have associations, and we have the area development group that they are organizing for them to be able to improve their lives down the road. And then lastly, the communities themselves are bringing the concept of communal marketing. So they want to have different markets at different locations at different times, inviting the entire population to come and buy their vegetables, buy their grown food, buy whatever they need to buy at a specific location on a shifting method. Thank you.
Sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Orlando. So many positive changes we're seeing, so many positive differences coming out in the different communities. And thank you so much for sharing that. Decima, what changes have you seen in your communities in St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
We have registered, I think particularly around the time of the volcanic eruption, we've seen where the communities would have opened up in terms of their responsiveness to assisting. I can give you an example. I know that one of the very first set of boxes that we got support, that in terms of material support, would have come from one community in Paget Farm to another community in St. Vincent for persons who would have been evacuated and became shelterees. We are generally responsive people, but it was the organized structure in which it was done that I believe that is commendable, and I believe it is a difference. People became more empathetic, and they were able to not necessarily wait on big donors, but they were able to get their immediate family members, their house to house, and they were able to package this stuff. Because of course, you know, things will come later, but at the critical moment when you need a hand, they were there. I want to leave with the meeting the responsiveness of the Paget Farm team. They were officially launched in February. I believe it was February 13th. And within less than a week, they were called into action, and they in fact sprang into action, and they responded to a major house fire of somebody in the community. They were there before the officials. You know, the officials would eventually get there, but they were there. And so we saw much of their training. As a matter of fact, if you had the opportunity to see their chat during the night, they became really busy as to how they would approach things. So I believe that that really is a plus that we can add in terms of our differences that we have observed. I believe also that for the community, in terms of a structure, you must have a structure in place if you're going to be effective. I am not sure that we met a structure. In fact, one was formed in each of the communities while we were working. They are in need of some additional support in that area. But the fact is, they have provided a model, and a model that is not hid, because the community would refer to them as those persons in the blue or those persons in the green, those in the orange. They were seeing that community spirit coming out, and they are able to respond to, the community is able to respond to the persons who we have trained. Many of them are seeing persons who are interested in joining their numbers, joining the ranks. And obviously, if you are interested in joining, it's because you're seeing that there is some sort of progress being made. So we are leaving those structures behind. That's a difference that we are leaving behind. And I think the whole business of becoming vocal, getting their MPs involved is also very important. We are also seeing that. To what extent these MPs were directly involved in their communities, I'm not sure we can measure that, but for sure now they are held accountable because our communities look to them, particularly the CDRTs who are leading the charges. So those are differences we can note.
And those are indeed some wonderful differences. Thank you so much, Jasima, for sharing. It's really exciting to hear how the community members have taken up the ownership in their own hands. They have received the training, but they've also been able to own it. They've owned their responsibilities as community disaster response team members and responding to, you mentioned the example of the fire that happened within a week after they were trained, and they were able to put that into practice. So that's indeed amazing to see some of these changes, and positive changes at that, in the communities since the project has started. We're going to ask Joel to share with us before we wrap up with final lessons learned. Can you share with us what changes you have seen in the communities in Suriname since the CRB project has started?
Yes, for Suriname, I would say there are a lot of changes and differences that we have seen. Our colleagues from, or my colleagues from Belize and St. Vincent mentioned some of them already. So I want to say that for the communities, they have been able to receive the necessary training to be more aware and actually also know what to do to be prepared when it comes to disaster response and preparation, and especially disasters that are caused by climate change. We see that they are more proactive in taking actions, especially when it comes to issues within their communities. Not only we saw that during the floods, but also when we look at Mungo Tapu, the community members of this, the members of this community also went to the government for other issues within the community that also resulted in support from the government to provide them with water, for example. So we not only see that there is a strengthening in the collaboration with the local government and the government as a whole, but we also see that internally within the community, there is also a stronger bond between not only the community, the CDRT members, but also other community members. Because one of the things is that the CDRT members, what they have learned from out of the CRB project, they also need to disseminate to their fellow community members. And we have seen that that also increases interest within the community itself. We also see that capacities, for example, water harvesting capacities has been increased through the micro projects, but also accessibility of pathways within one of the communities. And also, yeah, their crops, the production of crops have been increased through solar powered water pumps so that their irrigation systems were also improved, but also machines that could also produce products out of the crops that they harvest. Yes, so we see that the CRB project itself has been impacting the community in different areas. And we as Red Cross Red Cross Suriname are happy to see that that is happening. And we also receive positive feedback from the communities in terms of also expecting more support when it comes to other areas, because we had mainly focused on the climate change, but also PGIE and disaster response. But most of them are confident to step ahead and not only wait for support from the Red Cross, but they also go to their local governments, also go to their the local companies that can provide, for example, for material to make their roads better. So yes, these are some of the things that I can mention so far.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joel. So we have seen so many different positive changes in the communities in all three countries. And, you guys have been doing an amazing job. So just keep up the awesome work. But before we wrap up this live, we want to learn, what is one major lesson that you have learned from the CRB project? So Orlando, we're going to go back over to you. If you could just share maybe in 30 seconds as we get ready to wrap up, what's one major lesson that you have learned? Then we'll go to the Seymour, then Joel.
Thank you, Ms. Teresa. 30 seconds, a bit short. I had a long list. But however, we have seen as a result of the project a lifestyle change of communities where we have families involved in the daily activities of things. We have seen the changes of crops. For example, they're using passion fruit and pineapple juices to instead of citrus juices. So we have seen a big change in family unity, all that fragmentation that we are seeing before is slowly changing. And also we have, if you one more second, we also notice that there is a need for increased networking for us to be able to convert communities to become resilient. We need to involve more of our line ministries, be more involved, be more aggressive in the networking that we are doing.
Awesome. So one major lesson for you is the need for more networking in your local communities. Awesome. All right. So Decima, what's one major lesson that you have learned?
My colleague took the second one. I was going to start there, but I can say that it is not what you're given, but it is what you do with what you get.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have the the length of time that our colleagues had, but we're quite satisfied that we were able to engage networking. It's so important. And the legacy of CRB is going to be carried on. Those torches that we have lit are going to be carried on by the relationships we have built over the last 18 months of the project. So that was a major lesson that we learned. We are not going to be there, we are out, but the project is alive, it is well, and the project continues after we've left the scene.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much. So yes, building the relationships is key, and I liked how you mentioned that they will continue because, of course, we're talking about sustainability. We have to ensure that the project goes on beyond after the end date of the project, that we're able to continue with everything, all the work that you have done. So good job. Joel, can you tell us what's your major lesson that you have learned from this?
Yes. Well, what we have learned is that the communities already have certain systems in place, and we need to be aware of that for us to be able to strengthen these existing practices, especially when we look at, for example, the early warning system, but also the roles for men, women, and children within a certain community. And it also gives us actually the opportunity to help not only these communities within the project, but the lessons that we have learned within these communities, we can also share them with other communities. Also, the collaboration between the three countries, actually the sharing of knowledge and experience also was something that can be considered as one of the great lessons that has been learned.
All right, thank you so much, Joel. All right, so we have heard from the project coordinators from the respective countries, Belize, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Suriname. Now we want to hear from the project managers. So we'll start with Weldo from IFRC, and then Matthew, we'll end with you. What's your major lesson that you have learned from this project? Weldo?
Hi again. For us, our role in this project as IFRC had mainly to do with the development of tools and the training that the countries would have implemented, as well as we would have conducted regional trainings as well. So for us, one of the lessons that we learned is about being flexible. Our IFRC training usually have very heavy practical components, which allows us not only to teach or share with the information, but to allow persons involved in the training to actively participate. So through this or during this time, especially the pandemic, one of the lessons that we've learned and we've seen successfully being able to be implemented through this project is our flexibility and the ability to adapt our training to online medium. So we've taken several of our training that we would usually do physically, and we've been able to adapt them to modules that remain interactive enough for persons to continue to benefit within more or less the same level that they would physically. So that was one of our major lessons learned in terms of being flexible and being able to adapt, particularly in this space where we had so many restrictions as a result of the ongoing pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Velda. Yes, and I think the COVID-19 lesson was a major lesson learned for us all, and we just have to learn to pivot. So Matthew, what was your major lesson that you learned?
I don't know if it's my major because there's a lot. I do concur with what was said, but one thing that for me, I never really suspect until we leave the project is what is the impact of addressing climate change. I just realized that although our objective was making the communities more resilient to the climate change effects, I realized how much other side effects, positive side effects it had. I mean, I think especially in the context of COVID, I think we saw like many benefit that it brought, even if we were addressing climate change adaptation. I think through the networks and the local partnerships that were built, and the different deliverables like the micro project, we made the communities much more resilient, also in terms of I would say an overall resiliency, not just in terms of disaster, but it had to create, because it improved livelihoods in many aspects. It affects health of the people, improve their health, and also improve social cohesion. Like we saw these partnerships, we saw kids being involved, kids teaching to adults, adults teaching to kids. So for me, it was not just a climate change adaptation project, although that was the objective. I see it had many additional impact that are very important, especially in the current context of crisis. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Matthew. And thank you to you all. There has been so much information shared. And, we know that this is just a tip of the iceberg in terms of what you guys have been doing in the different projects, in the different activities in the project. We have only managed to just touch the tip of the iceberg, but you have all been doing such an amazing job. And we just want to thank you for the work that you've been doing and continue to do, and wish you all the very best. I know in the chat we had Thomas mentioning that, the Red Cross should definitely do some more leadership training for young people. So thank you, Thomas, for mentioning or for suggesting that, of course, because we want to ensure that sustainability is taken into consideration and being able to pass on the baton, so to speak. And then Orlando mentioned that bottoms-up approach to development is successful as it develops ownership. So not just going into the community and us telling them what to do, but also ensuring that they own it from their level as the community members as well. And also he mentioned that the dynamics in urban areas versus rural areas is different. So that's also something to consider as we work with communities. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And thank you to those who have been watching us on the live. It was, of course, a pleasure having you. We, of course, if you want to continue to find out more about this project and keep up to date on all the different activities that's being done, you can follow us on social media. You can follow the CADRIM page, and CADRIM stands for Red Cross Caribbean Disaster Risk Management Center. So you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can also go to the CADRIM website, which is www.cadrim.org, and you can get some more information on the project. There will be a page that will have all the different information, the lessons learned, the key activities that have taken place in the project. And of course, you can also follow any of the national societies that were mentioned. Of course, we have the Belize Red Cross, and they're on Facebook. We have Suriname Red Cross, that's also on Facebook. And we also have the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Red Cross, which is on Facebook. You're on Instagram and you're on Twitter. So you can follow them as well. And you can also follow the Canadian Red Cross. They're on all the social media platforms, and also visit their website, Red Cross Canada. So you can also as well visit the IFRC website, ifrc.org, as well as the IFRC Americas YouTube page, which of course some of you are following on, or you can visit the IFRC Americas Instagram and Twitter accounts. So you have so many different options to just keep up to date with what's happening in this and all the other initiatives of the Red Cross. And again, we just want to thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.